Our main story tonight concerns school. It's the only setting in which a child dissecting a frog is not an immediate red flag. We teach kids a lot in school, from reading to long division to how to play the fucking recorder for some reason. But recently, there has been a lot of concern over one particular thing that people worry that kids are learning.
Critical race theory is being taught in our schools. Critical race theory is bunk.
Critical race theory is a lie. From the first word to the last, from start to finish.
Racist critical race theory.
Critical race theory.
Critical race theory in the schools and the wokeness.
Let me tell you right now, critical race theory is bigoted, it is a lie, and it is every bit as racist as the Klansmen in white sheets.
I do not like that Ted Cruz man. I do not like him shouting Klan. I do not like him in a room. I do not like him in Cancun. I do not like him playing ball. I do not like his face at all. I wish he'd lose his cushy job. That man Ted Cruz is a fucking knob.
It's the perfect way to start the show. What's up, everybody? Man, we are excited to do this episode today. I've been wanting to do this episode for a very long time. And the main reason is with the racism in America at an all-time high. It is out in the open. Proud ignorance is apparently the new trend. We wanted to show ways to fight back. And this is like the words we're going to talk about are going to freak people out on the right-hand side of the political spectrum, because we're going to be talking about critical race theory, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and even anti-racism, what all those concepts are, what they mean, and how we can use them as tools to not only progress as a country, but I think in the end, make our country less racist, less racist systemically. That was hard to get out. But create more equality and a better future for everybody. Like I don't even know how to put it. There's so many benefits that we could get if we were just opening our minds a little bit to these concepts. Mike, you're on mute. Go ahead, I got you.
But then the country will be less white. And how could we be a perfect Christian nation if we're not white? Because that's what they want, right?
Right. And these people like Charlie Kirk, people like Ben Shapiro, and even politicians like Marjorie Taylor Greene are pitching like critical race theory as anti-white racism, which isn't even a thing. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. They're promoting stuff like the white replacement theory, thinking that people of color are coming to the country to replace them, take their jobs. But that's not the case. So we are here to hopefully open some minds, hopefully educate. We do have some special guests to help us talk about this subject, because this is not an easy subject to talk about. I mean, I got to point out that this is not something that's taught in high school. It is a higher level college class. I'm a high school graduate, so I'm trying my best to go ahead and put a coherent show together on this subject. So it's not one that's easy to talk about. So we do have help. We do have back on the show, returning again, and I'm so happy to have her back, is Liz Mkhitaryan, founder of Stop Moms for Liberty. How are you? Oh, now I see you're on mute too.
Yeah, why is everyone muted?
Because everybody's
going on today.
I think I'm
Sorry
good.
about that. What's going on?
It's very symbolic, Mike. It's symbolic. They're trying to quiet us.
Oh my God. Is that what's going on?
It might be. It's a conspiracy, I'm pretty sure.
We've been hacked.
Yeah. I want to thank you guys. You're always on the right side of things, and I so appreciate that. So I love our partnership. Stop Moms for Liberty is in conjunction with you doing these series of podcasts, and I think today's is going to be a really good one. I'm excited.
I agree. We love it. We love the opportunity to learn and spread information that we are not experts in, right? We believe in experts here, because what the right doesn't believe in is expertise. The right believes that everyone's unique individual opinion is the only truth that there is. But in reality, we know there are people that dedicate their lives to subjects, to difficult subjects, to topics, to trying to help people, to educate people. And experts are important because they know everything that they can know about a subject, and then we listen to them and we discuss and we ourselves learn and then pass on that knowledge. And that's what the right is afraid of.
Speaking of her being silenced earlier, what happened? You're in Facebook jail now, apparently? What did
Oh,
you
I don't
do?
know. I got some message that I'm restricted for something. I think it's because I did multiple reports against a hit page that was developed against
Oh,
me and
wonderful.
everyone else in my community that are on the
So
right
you
side of things.
reported them, and they were like, "We're not going to have any of that."
I believe so. So that's the only
Alright.
thing that's different, as I reported multiple times, because their posts were really pretty disgusting and should be, what Facebook actually pays attention to, but who knows?
So
But
To
I'll
pay
get over
attention
it.
to ad revenue.
Yeah.
I wanted to thank you again for being on the show with us and bringing us another guest. Not only do we have a special episode today, Tuesday's episode is going to be pretty fun as well. We're actually having 5 Gen Z activists on along with the 3 of us. So the screen's going to be full of people, but we're going to have a lot of fun with that one as well.
Looking
So
forward to
how did you meet Ron?
Ron and I are in the same county in Florida, Brevard County within the state. And as people may or may not know, that's where Moms for Liberty was started. And both Ron and I and everyone else across the district really thought that it was a joking thing at the beginning, didn't really take them seriously. But then our school board actually flipped to be a Moms for Liberty majority pushed school board. And so Ron and I have worked in conjunction over several different things throughout the course of our friendship. And I just have tremendous respect for him. And I just recently, heard him speak at a candidates event. Her name is Amber Yance. She's running for one of our school board seats. So there's a little plug for Amber. And our other one is Taylor, Avanice Taylor, excuse me, my mouth won't work, who is running for the other seat. So it's really important for us to do that local work to get school board members on board that are not going to be these extremists.
Well,
So,
especially down in Florida. My
God.
God.
Yeah. So both Ron and his wife, we had a critical race theory professor come in from Flagler County, and both of them attended. So I had that connection to CRT and Ron from that point. I think that was, maybe about 2 years ago now that we had that speaker come in. That was under a different organization than Stop Moms. So I am a big supporter of Ron's, and I'm really excited that he was able to get the time cleared. He has a busy family life, but he put us first. Yay, Ron!
Yay!
Yeah, hopefully this is the first of many episodes. And I do actually, before I even start talking about it, let me go ahead and bring Ron on. Now, Ron is a husband, father of 2 girls, 2 pit bulls. I have 2 pit bulls too. I love pit bulls. You're originally from Marjorie Taylor Greene's area, but now you're currently in Brevard County, Florida, and you are a Navy veteran. Now, the interesting fact that you told us that I really want to point out is you are stationed on subs, Navy submarines. Now, I'm claustrophobic, so even talking about it, I started getting like goosebumps. I'm like, no. What was that like?
Actually, it was incredibly cool. A lot of times you hear about, concerns about claustrophobia or whatever. One of my COs, he was 6'5".
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, my other guy I served with, he was like 6'3", very easy 260. And no, he didn't have to move his belly for you to see his belt buckle, if you understand what I'm saying.
He could run through those bulkheads without tripping and killing himself.
What bulkheads?
Well, the doors between all the different. I'm using the wrong terms. I don't know.
I served with another guy on Chicago. Pat, I think Pat was 6'7".
Oh my God! No.
I mean, it's not like the movie, like those old World War II movies.
That's true.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Navy subs were like one of the most coveted pieces of military technology. It's one of those things like they exist, but you really don't know what they are about, what they are capable of. Like it's one of the, you know what I mean?
I do. No.
Well, yeah, you do. Yeah. Now, all right. One question before we get into like stuff you've been involved in and what you're working on currently is what was the longest you've ever been underwater, like in the sub at one point?
This
is not allowed to say.
No, this is the first time I've ever been asked that question. You know,
I'm weird.
now I'm going to tell you, read the T-shirt, okay?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Sarcastic.
Oh, okay. I got you. All right. I'm not original.
He fits
then.
right in with this crowd.
I was trying to be original, but what? Yeah, come on.
Are you kidding? I'm like fluent. I'm fluent in sarcasm. Are you kidding?
You'll fit right in. You'll fit.
It's
right
the only
in.
language we have to fight.
It depends. It depends on what it is that we're doing. The longest I've ever been under, I believe, is 58 days.
Wow,
I think
that's cool.
somewhere along those lines. We got extended a little bit during Desert Storm. So
okay,
and to plug my old boat and my shipmates and my crew, we are submarine famous. During Desert Storm, we were the first submarine to fire Tomahawks in wartime. We were also the first submarine since World War II to conduct a wartime patrol, which is pretty interesting.
Wow.
And our crew is, well, I should say that particular crew, we were unique. We were unique from the standpoint of not only the things that we accomplished, but it was after the whole Desert Storm thing. We still had a series of first ever for 688 class submarines. You know, we were the first ones to actually deploy with a battle group. We were the first ones to actually operate submerged in at the time we called it the Persian Gulf. Now it's called the Arabian Gulf. I can actually tell you that I was in the area when Black Hawk Down went down, and I was pretty pissed off about it.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy.
Thank you for your service, Ron.
Yeah, I think we figured out another episode.
My father was in Desert Storm as well. He was the Army.
Veterans Against Moms for Liberty. Let's do it.
Right.
Damn, Jeremy, you just dated me like a motherfucker, man.
Yeah, right. Sorry, man. I'm sorry. I remember that. Like one of my core memories is I remember watching my dad leave for Desert Storm as a kid. I think I was like 13, 14 years old.
Yeah,
and I remember him coming back, but I remember what it felt like having a family member out at war and what that kind of like, you just don't know. And this is the days before, like, you know, FaceTime and cell phones that you can call anywhere in the world. You know, we got like a letter here and there, maybe a phone call like every month or two. That's the kind of communication we had back then. So a lot of things have changed. I don't know for the better or for the worse when it comes to war, but we'll get into that later. So, all right, let's get into some of our topics. Now, the first one we definitely wanted to talk about, and the one I've been so excited to talk about is critical race theory. But before we talk about that, I want to point out, like, a lot of people want to know, like, what is the next administration? Like, if Donald Trump were to be elected, like, what is their goals? And I have, thanks to Liz, this is Project 2025 had this on their website, and they took it down. I think it's because, I mean, it's basically a roadmap 900 pages long on how to turn America into Nazi Germany, basically.
A racist hellscape.
This is just a couple paragraphs I'm going to read, and it just has to, some of it pertains to what we're talking about in the show. So the next conservative president, this is directly out of their pages, okay, not my words, this is their words, must make the institutions of American civil society hard targets for what they're calling woke culture warriors. This starts with deleting, okay, not banning, deleting the terms sexual orientation and gender identity, diversity, equity, inclusion, gender equality, gender equity, gender awareness, gender sensitive, abortion, reproductive health. They want to delete this stuff, people. Reproductive rights and any other term used to deprive Americans of their First Amendment rights, which makes no ever sense whatsoever. They want to get rid of them completely. This is their plan. And that's just a paragraph of the 900 pages of horror. They want to go after civil rights, education, judicial system, legislative system, literally everything. They want to break it down, tear it apart, and put a bunch of loyalists in. And that's why we're seeing what we see today. They're trying to implement it now on a state-by-state basis. That's why we have people like Charlie Kirk. That's why we have people like, what's the other guy, Ben Shapiro, that are elevated to a status of influence, which I don't understand. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So Ron is going to teach us, like, what is critical race theory? Why was it formed? What is the purpose of it, really?
Ron, can you come a little closer to your camera, too?
Oh.
Thank you.
Spent so much time here. I just finished just finished another semester for school.
Yay.
Yeah, I'm down to 3. And the last semester was pretty freaking brutal. I got 3 classes left. That's it. Now I'm done. Yay. So one thing I wanted to point out about the Project 2025, and maybe you could do this as a future episode, because the Project 2025 is such a long document. Pull up 14 points of fascism and see how many of those things that they want to do fall within those 14 points.
Probably all of them.
Well, you can say probably.
I mean,
I always
definitely.
No, I don't disagree with you. No, but I think it's better to operate in the realm of what we know, or what where we're able to provide evidence for, versus speculation.
Okay, absolutely.
So maybe you can do that for a future show.
No, definitely. I already wrote it down. Liz knows I take notes throughout the entire show.
Yeah, and we actually have done a past episode when we first started, all on Project 2025, where we highlighted certain pages, we read directly out of it, and now it's being talked about more. But back, 6 months ago, you barely heard anything about it. But I don't think people realize how big of a threat this is. It's well-funded, dark money, lots of groups involved, and this is their plan. This is what they want.
Well, yeah,
And they want to ban things like critical race theory now, and they want to ban, diversity, equity, and inclusion. They want to, I think, bring back segregation. I mean, that's what I think their end game is. You know what I mean?
Well, that sarcasm slipped out again. My bad.
Oh no,
that's okay.
Well, I think Project 2025 is the marching orders for, let's say, the culmination of all their attacks on critical race theory, diversity, equity, inclusion, being, teaching people how to be anti-racist. This is their way of stifling freedom in a way we've never seen. This goes beyond fixing the laws that were, or even some cases were not in place, to help make this country a bit more equitable, right? Like the civil rights movement and all that. But this is fascism on a level that this country has never seen a united effort, and it's scary. But what they're doing is, with these attacks on critical race theory and diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, is they're trying to make it that there is a group of people trying to tell white people that they're the enemy, it's all their fault, and we need to erase you. And that's not what any of this is. This is trying to bring to light policies and assumptions and structures that have been allowed to, in some cases, or intentionally designed to subjugate non-white people, specifically Black people. So I guess one of my biggest questions is, knowing how, let's just start with critical race theory. We know that this is a high-level college, even graduate-level concept that is being taught only there. How did the right pick up on CRT, considering it isn't actually taught in public schools anywhere in the country? How did they make this a rallying cry to get people to vote against teachers and against equity and inclusion and all that? Where did this come from?
Miss Liz, you want to start? You want me to do it? Okay.
I just muted myself. It was started intentionally by a gentleman named Christopher Rufo, and his actually stated publicly agenda was to make everything related to race under that umbrella of the catchphrase CRT, which he knew darn well was not what was actually happening, and it was to make it the boogeyman. Those are his words. So this was all an intentional attack.
How valid do you have to be if your prime argument is we need to generate a boogeyman? We're not going to help people. We need to find a bugaboo to scare people into voting. Like, doesn't that kind of take away any validity that you have?
Before, Ron, let me get your let me play this video, because the next video really shows how wrong people are about what critical race theory is about. And then I'll get your input on this one, Ron.
Especially judging by what's been happening at school board meetings across the country.
The Western culture and values that brought forth Christianity in the founding documents are being called evil and racist.
I am not co-parenting with the government. It is not your job to force these ideas onto my child.
The narrative in this country is that we're all inherently racist, and I'm about sick of it.
It's a Marxist ideology,
and we all know it.
All of these lessons have the intent to make our children feel disgust towards our nation.
This country isn't even a racist country. We elected Obama for 2 terms.
Wait, hold on. Hold on. America can't be racist because of Obama?
Yeah,
I got a black friend.
No,
I'm kidding.
I got a black friend.
That's exactly what that is.
So I think I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Oh no, well, I was gonna say exactly how did a critical race theory come to be, and what in your take, how important is it for us to progress as a country to
I think,
start learning about concepts like this?
To immediately answer your question, I think the first thing we have to talk about is this term that I learned called intellectual dishonesty. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Christopher Rufo, for example, he had to learn what critical race theory was in order to start teaching people what it wasn't. You understand what I'm saying? So he knows that all of this foolishness that he keeps telling people, this is what critical race theory is, he knows that it isn't. So he's purposely being dishonest. Is that the same thing as lying to people? No, I believe intellectual dishonesty is more insidious because you know the truth and yet you refuse to teach the truth, even if you have a large platform. That I believe the think tank that he worked for is called the Manhattan Institute. They're based out of New York. And he knows what critical race theory is. I think it's also important, if since we're on the topic of one of my favorite people in the entire world, he went on every TV show that he could get on. He went on every podcast, anybody and everybody that would listen to him, that would book him. He went on that show. But you know who he didn't go on TV with? Kimberly Crenshaw. One of the major influences of critical race theory. She wrote a lot about intersectionality. There's another person that you would never find him on TV with, who also is a major contributor, who was a major contributor to the development of critical race theory. It's Mary Matsuda. You know why? Because a lot of the influencers and contributors to the development of this theory, and then we also need to understand this is a theory. This isn't law. This isn't written in stone. But Mary Matsuda, who's now a judge, I believe, she's not black. Uh-oh. So, neither is Richard Delgado. Right? So when you start bringing these other folks in, and you really start looking at the type of people that we're really talking about, right? So Richard Delgado, he lives out west. Mary Matsuda, I believe she is in California. If you're down south, then of course you know about Derek Bell and Kimberly Crenshaw already. Right. But when you start looking at things through this lens of how we view people through their skin color, you start to find out that racism is predominant against the marginalized community in the geographic section of the country. So if you are in Arizona, Nevada, certain portions of California, and if you happen to be Hispanic, then I can almost guarantee you, if you go back and you look at the data, the majority of students that are in schools that are getting the discipline referrals will be of the major marginalized community in that area. We saw this, Miss Lizzie, I think you remember the prison video, and we had a major meeting about that. And while we were talking about it, I was sitting there going through my phone, pulling up data from the Department of Education. And if you are in Titusville and you happen to be a Hispanic, guess what? There's a better chance for you to stay home and maybe do Florida virtual school than it is for you to go to class. If you are in Melbourne or Palm Bay and you happen to look like me, guess what? It's almost better for you to stay home than to go to school and get a referral.
Ron, can I just add a couple points there? So,
absolutely.
Prison video that he's talking about was, we have a local school board member that went on camera with our local sheriff, and they talked about how they were going to stomp out discipline and that there were going to be changes made. This was filmed in front of the prison that there would be changes made in our public school system. And the cities that Ron is mentioning, those are all Brevard County. So I know what he's talking about, but I know we have a national audience. So those are all Brevard County, Florida cities where that video was made and where we were addressing a very high apportionate amount of Black student referrals. And this was the answer. Oh, okay, we'll go in front of a prison and that will fix it all.
Oh yeah, of course.
Well, that's part of it, right? The assumption of audiences that we're seeing from a lot of these people, especially now today, they think that they're talking to certain groups and identifying with them due to a setting that is such a racist assumption, right? We have certain people who think that because they have 91 indictments, they might be more popular with the Black community. Are you out of your mind? Like the simple assumption, and in some cases it might even be, and I hate to use this word, simple, benign stereotyping. And again, I'm not saying that there's no harm in stereotyping, but you might have people that are sitting around dinner table that have no idea of the history of what Black people or any minority has gone through in this country. And they might go, yeah, I mean, I guess if Trump is in prison, that might elicit a response from, no. Those simple assumptions about what makes a person part of, what makes a person's culture, right? That narrative has very often not been allowed to be given by those people. All the narratives we have about what makes up different groups are often from a white perspective, top down, and no one challenges them. So when you have a critical race theory that is showing where these assumptions are actually coming from, why they're so inherent into our daily lives, why a kind grandma might just have a belief about something, it's not as simple as, well, that was an older time. There are institutions that are causing racism to be an assumed state of being in this country. So I look at it as, go ahead, Liz.
Wrap up that piece of it by saying that now our school board is patting themselves on the back because our discipline referrals have soared. They are taking that as a win. Yes, teachers need support about discipline, but they're not looking at what's causing the discipline issues. And so all we're going to see is, again, our numbers are going to skyrocket with which kids are being.
That's so funny, right? Because that's how cops work. Oh, we got X amount of pounds of this off the street. Great. Why is it on the street? Why do people search that out? You know what I mean? So again, they're addressing the racist assumption of the problem as the solution. So I guess one of my big questions is, well, CRT is not being taught the way people think it is. Shouldn't we be discussing racism? Shouldn't we make sure that kids are exposed to a real history? And as a sidebar, if you don't teach the history of racism, you don't show how it has impacted people, you cannot expect kids to learn to act a different way. So again, are some of these people who are opposing teaching critical race theory at all, but are really more upset about exposing their kids to the truth about this country, isn't that really what their goal is? They don't want their kids to know how racist their parents are, how okay with being racist their parents are, because that just seems like what the fight is to me.
To deny the fact that America was built by rich white people and that systemic racism is literally built into everything, because the whole system was designed to benefit rich white people. You know what I mean? So if we don't use tools like critical race theory, if we don't have programs like DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion, again, you can't deny these things exist. I mean, these racist bigots are out in the open now. They're proud of themselves. So real quick, let me play this next video. It's Ben Shapiro, and then Ron, I want to get your take on this. They don't think religion in school is indoctrination, but for some reason, they think critical race theory.
Well, because it's the correct religion, Jeremy.
How does this even make sense? But on Earth too, somehow this makes sense in their idiot little minds.
So, as a Republican, being pro-free speech, do you have anything to say against this? Like, we're really simply just outlawing certain words to be used in public spheres, such as education. I feel like more Republicans should kind of see this as concerning. You know, you guys always quote 1984 or whatever. this is like an Orwellian move, isn't it?
So it depends on what level of education we're talking about. If we're talking about the idea that critical race theory can be taught as one of many theories on college campuses, I have no problem with it. Marxism is taught as one of many theories on college campuses. They suggest that critical race theory has a praxis component, meaning it's a practice component that is designed in order to indoctrinate kids in a particular type of thinking about how America's institutions work. Do I think that the taxpayers of the state of Florida have an obligation to subsidize the indoctrination of their children in that? No. The anti-American framework of critical race theory, which is unrooted in actual history, ought not be taught in America's public schools.
All right, Ron. Balls in your court.
Lord have mercy. Okay, so first off, man, I don't even know where to begin with that. We're going to talk about history. Okay, fine. Let's talk about history. Let's talk about. Okay, tell you what. Let's put it in a different context. After Pearl Harbor, what do we do? Right.
But people, yeah.
One of the families that we locked up in internment camps, their last name was Takai.
Yep. Sulu himself.
So you know where we're going. We know where I'm already going with this. Like, we locked up Sulu.
Yep, we did.
But notice the terms that I used. We locked up Sulu, not they, not you guys, not your grandparents. I said we because our history is all inclusive.
Yep.
As a nation, whatever our mentality is, it's part of our shared history. No matter what it is, no matter how nasty it is, no matter how ugly it is, it's part of our shared history. History is there to be a teacher, to be a guide, to say, hey, we started this. We went down this path, right? To be fair, again, trying to be fair. The folks back in the 30s and 40s, they did not have a very good understanding of what the end result of Nazism and fascism would be. Nope. They didn't. Now, we do. We saw what ended up with it. And that is a ginormous red flag that says, don't do this again. But what has happened from that time until now, right? And with little, I like to call them focal points in between. What has happened from then until now is that we are living in an age where our so-called leaders, our political leaders, they see an easy path to power, to influence, to a little bit of money, and an opportunity for a lot of grift by saying the most outrageous things, by pushing the idea of extremism. That gets them an easy path to power. You don't have to know anything. You don't have to tell the truth.
Yep.
You just have to be more and more extreme. Now, quick sidebar. Let me also point out, an extremist agenda is a self-defeating venture.
Yep.
Why? Because we all have our personal lines that we will not cross. So when you hit those individual lines of demarcation that you're not going to cross, well, if you're in the in group now, you're suddenly out because you're not dedicated enough. You were never one of us in the first place, right? And so you become one of the members of the out group because you have lines that you won't cross. There was a lady here, and I've seen this happen. There was a lady here in Brevard County, and not to be overly comedic, but let's just say a waterbed and a beanbag had a child and filled it with hate and racism, right? This woman was at every event spewing some of the most bigoted, because there's a difference between racism and bigots. Bigots have to upgrade to be racist because they're too broke to be a racist, right? So this woman spewed some of the most vile, untrue, bigoted things until she hit a line about one of the people that she absolutely detested. She hit that line and she said, no, I'm not going past this. And you know what she did? She took some of the information that she had and she gave it to his lawyer.
That's crazy.
But it's truth. It's what happens. Now, again, let me segue back into what we were actually talking about. Sorry. All right. When we talk about critical race theory, I think it's important that we make the distinction between CRT and critical race theory. I know critical race theory is a lot to say, but CRT, we need to, when I say we, I mean people like you and Miss Liz and myself, we need to define that as Christopher Rufo theory. In other words, it's garbage. Okay. If you go on to the Moms for Liberty website, you'll say, well, here's what CRT is. And there's only 3 points there. And every single one of them is wrong. Okay.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask a question. Right. How many tenets do anybody here? How many tenets are there to critical race theory?
I guess
I
just
didn't know
one.
this one either.
Being a racist.
Mike, remember, you got to have power, influence, and authority to be a racist. If you don't have any of those three, you're just a broke ass bigot. Okay.
Wow.
Right.
Can we get shirts made with that, please?
So what?
Well, can we get shirts made with that exact phrase? That's amazing.
Right. That's that's great.
So depending upon who you read, and I will say this again, depending upon who you read, there's either 4 or 5 tenets to critical race theory. One of those tenets is that race is a social construction. Okay. Meaning that there's really no real difference between us based on our skin color. Okay. When the Human Genome Project completed decoding our DNA, that was science. That was scientific proof. There's no real difference between any of us. Now, where does DEI tie into all of this? You know, I even like when the ship hit the bridge in Baltimore, I started seeing memes. Oh, DEI did this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? And then I believe freaking butthead guy with hair and gums showing more than anything else.
Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk. Man,
yeah.
It's amazing who you know who I was talking about.
As soon as you said gums,
Ridiculous.
as soon as you said gums, I'm like, I know who he's talking about.
But he had an issue about the pilot being qualified suddenly.
Yep.
Right.
Amazing.
Now, again, let's go back and look at history. There's a group of African Americans that wanted to fight in World War II. They had a specific skill set that they wanted to use to do their part for the country that did not love them as much as they loved their country. They had to train separately. They had to their appropriations were separate.
Yep.
Their record was impeccable. Never lost a bomber. We call them the Tuskegee Airmen.
Yep.
Right. The Tuskegee Airmen proved that all of this foolishness about race, and by the way, that's also caught up in, at the time, there's this big thing called eugenics that was going on.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Actually, that was a little bit beforehand. That was like 1917-ish or so. Right. That's when all that really got going, got steam going, right? But the Tuskegee Airmen proved that however much melanin it is that you have in your skin has absolutely nothing to do with your physiology and performing a certain task or your ability to learn. For a long time, there was the narrative that black girls could not do math and or science.
What?
Go like this, Jeremy. Right.
That's
But the narrative was black girls cannot do math and science.
Yeah, who got us to the moon?
You already know the answer to the question.
Oh, I didn't know that's where you were going. I'm sorry.
That's great.
Sorry.
Okay,
no, you already know the answer to the question, but this also segues into another tenet of critical race theory, which is storytelling.
Oh.
Without storytelling, we would not know about Katherine Johnson. Without storytelling, we would not know about Tulsa. We would not know about Ocoee. We would not know about Rosewood. And we would not know about the only successful coup that happened in the United States, in 1898 in Wilmington, North Carolina. Storytelling. Because records, again, we have to shift our mindset to back then. Records for people that look like me were not important.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
For decades, the only records are, for decades, should say for centuries, right? But for an exceedingly long time, the records that were important were property records, buying, selling, trading.
White landholders.
Okay.
And that's the hard to talk about.
and to be even more fair. Again, quick segue, then I'm gonna quick sidebar, then I'm gonna jump back in. To be more fair, if you read the Constitution in its entirety, it is more of a property document than it is a document that secures rights. We have the Bill of Rights, and we have the Bill of Rights, and we have our amendments. But the majority of the Constitution is a property document.
Search and seizure was about searching someone's land and home and taking things that they own.
Exactly. Right. So, anyways, segueing back in. So, had we not done the storytelling, had people not been there to witness it, we would not know about Katherine Johnson. Or better yet, how much our first space hero, John Glenn, really depended on her calculations for this math and science that the general narrative said that she could not learn because she could not do it.
That's amazing. Yeah.
You told them.
It's, oh man, what I'm hearing is that this is a attack on history, right? We always like to say history is written by, the victors. But that's, to me, not always the case. The victors may want to try and erase the history written by the people that weren't the victors, is how I always took that. Because the victors, if they're not wholesome in their intentions, have a vested interest in not letting anyone know the reality. So when these mothers and fathers and people that are yelling and ranting in school boards are like, we can't teach our kids that America's a racist country, what they're saying is, we're okay with our racist past and we don't want our kids to know about it because they're too fragile and they might question us. That's what they're trying to do, because you can't move forward and fix wrongs if you don't acknowledge them and read the stories of the people that suffered.
I think you're totally right. But I think, again, quick sidebar, I think part of this is because of our dedication to the narrative of American exceptionalism.
Yep.
Yeah, the illusion.
Bingo. We're perfect. Nothing's wrong.
We're the greatest country in the world.
Well, I mean, there's nothing saying that we can't be the greatest country in the world without these flaws that we had to overcome called growing pains.
Right.
Well, the American experiment assumes that we're going to have to work through things to get to the point we want to get.
We are truly up against a group of people that are anti-progress.
Oh yeah.
They don't want to move forward as a society. They don't want to move forward in civil rights. They don't want to move forward in women's rights. They want to go backwards.
Well, I think.
And that's based on fear. That's their fear that they're not going to be in the majority.
Proud ignorance is the new thing.
Well, I think
they don't know shit and they're happy about it.
To your point, Jeremy, and to your point, Miss Liz, I think what we are dealing with, I think is a unique time in history, not just American history, but just history, for our planet. Actually, what we are seeing specifically here in the United States is we are seeing a conspiracy of convenience and interest convergence, meaning there's not a big gathering, other than CPAC. There's no big gathering of people in a room saying, okay, first we're going to do this, then we're going to take this away from, okay, you do this part, and when you do this, we're going to jump in with this, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
No, I don't think that's really what's happening. What I think what's happening is you have all of these splinter groups that have been operating independently, and they see the writing on the wall, and you start to see these interests start to merge. So when the interests start to merge and a splinter group sees an opportunity to advance their particular facet of an argument, they go for it because the time is right.
Whereas Turning Point USA kind of sounds like being one of those groups that just grabbed onto this narrative because they've been around for a while.
I'd like to say that our side of things is also seeing that that's the approach that we need to take.
Yes.
And so that's why I think this is our moment in history as well. I have to, as a teacher, say, Ron, anybody that's watching this, what are some key takeaways as to how CRT came about and what CRT actually is, as opposed to the Christopher Rufo theory? So give us some like meat and potatoes about what CRT is, and then if you'll launch in the time that we have left on DEI, because I think that's thoroughly misunderstood as well.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, I think I could probably, can I share my screen real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, here, I'm going to do this.
I'm glad we tested that before the show.
Actually, while you're setting that up, let me go ahead and play. This is, we're still talking about. So, all right, let me play. This is Charlie Kirk, since we were talking about him. And I can't believe they're talking about this, about repealing the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And this is what I'm talking about. They're actually thinking about segregation. They're thinking about it. They just don't want to say it because they're little freaking cowards, but this is what they're talking about.
And the Civil Rights Act, though, let's be clear, created a beast, and that beast has now turned into an anti-white weapon.
Yeah, and that's the reality. And so we just need to fundamentally relook at a lot of our civil rights legal regime. And without that, even though I don't think it's sort of the magic bullet, but I think without that, there's limits to the amount of progress we're going to make.
Let's talk about discourse and dialogue. This topic would have been even more forbidden 4 or 5 years ago, but it's now becoming in more and more mainstream circles. Is that because the problem is becoming worse, or but our side is more courageous to confront it?
You know what? I get it now. White people are just so fucking good, excuse my language, at playing the victim.
That's yes.
What is it with white people? And I'm like, oh my God. Now we're being oppressed. What? No, we're not being oppressed. You're just being a bunch of ignorant assholes.
Equality for others is not oppression for you.
I'm sorry. I have to get out of my system. I apologize for the language, but man.
Well, again,
so people, and I always point out, Charlie Kirk has not even completed 1 year of junior college, and he's out there running around the country talking at colleges about and having podcasts where they're talking about repealing the Civil Rights Act. My God, one of the most important things that happened in American history that springboarded us forward. They're actually literally trying to scale it back to there. Unfreaking believable.
Ron, are you able to put up your
intellectual dishonesty?
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna leave it at that. Okay, here I'm gonna run through this like pretty quick.
Glad Ron knows what he's doing.
All right, can you see that?
No.
Hold up, I'll put it up. I got it.
There you go.
All right.
Here we go.
Okay, so we're going to talk about truth in tennis, and I'm going to run through this kind of quick. Actually, I've done this before. I also am the National DEI Chair for Defense of Democracy.
Oh,
nice. Oh,
really?
We've done stuff with them too.
So we got to reverse the trend of the worst people telling the best stories about America.
God, that's brilliant.
Right? we have to. Because why are these the best stories? They're the best stories because they make people feel things. It's not necessarily truth, but it all really depends on how it makes you feel.
It engages them
about things. Exactly. Right. So where does this whole story begin? Brown 1, Brown 2. Right. Brown 1, hey, you got to let black kids into school. Brown 2, you need to hurry up and do it. Then these three dudes came through and came along. Richard B. Russell, John C. Stennis. And if you see the name John C. Stennis and it rings a bell, that's because there's an aircraft carrier named after this guy.
The Stennis.
Exactly. CVN 74. How do I know? Because I was on CVN 75. Anyways, moving on. So
this is good.
They created this thing called the Southern Manifesto. The actual term is the Declaration of Constitutional Principles, and it's actually a legal document. It is on file, I believe, with the 84th Congress. Anybody can go look it up, but let me bring your attention straight down here to paragraph 10. So you see, it is founded on elemental humanity and common sense, for parents should not be deprived by government of the right to direct the lives and education of their own children. Does that sound?
We disagree with that.
Sounds familiar.
Does it sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That is Project 2025, page 11.
And Moms for Liberty website.
Yep.
Boom. Right there. So now on every t-shirt, every hat, every cup, every sign, every Facebook post that you see, we do not co-parent with the government, you need to think Southern Manifesto.
Oh, wow.
Man, that's fascinating, because that is the basic premise of trying to destroy public education, which is their biggest, most important task. Because if you get rid of that, everyone can just indoctrinate their own kids into whatever belief system they want.
And to agree with you and to amplify your point, the biggest threat to public education in a lot of the Republican-led states is the state legislature. With the expanded / universal school vouchers.
Yep.
We've talked about that before too. We had an episode we did with Dr. Cunningham about privatization of schools and all the dark money involved. So yeah, absolutely. We know.
I just wrote a research paper on it. So here's actually it was. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to get it. Actually, I had to cut some stuff out just to narrow it, keep it at 10 pages.
Do it.
So here's my guy, Ian Haney Lopez. He's talking about dog whistle politics, and here we start talking a lot about coded language. And then we have Lee Atwater, my dude right here. He gives us the shall we say the more contemporary lexicon for what a dog whistle really is. And the biggest point that we need to really take from this is that the byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than whites. If you're not sure who Lee Atwater was, he was Ronald Reagan's campaign strategist.
Yep.
Both terms.
That was my God, that interview quote is so awful. I'm sorry, but
it's true. You know, yes, it's true. It's awful. But Jeremy, I think it's important that we understand that we need to understand that this is how people think. This is not what people say because they want to be socially accepted. This is what people think. This is what they say behind closed doors when they don't think anyone else is listening.
Well, it's like the mayor of Baltimore said. He said they want to say it. They want to say he actually said they want to say the N-word. They're just cowards. So you're absolutely right. I can't imagine what they say behind closed doors. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's quite all right. Here's the quote that Miss Liz was talking about from our guy Christopher Rufo. Right. Like I said, he went on with everybody and anybody but people that are still alive that contributed heavily to critical race theory, which would be these people here. So you see Professor Crimshaw over here, Professor Delgado. Hey, look, there's Duncan Kennedy. Couldn't you see those two on stage debating it all out? Then you have Mary Matsuda, and I was wrong, the Judge Chong-Soon Lee. All of these people contributed to the development of critical race theory. Now, if you look at this particular slide, what do you notice?
It's not just black people.
Yeah, it's everybody.
Right. This is really what America looks like.
Yep.
This is also people that have felt the humiliation, the embarrassment, and the sting of racism.
Yep.
And they wanted to contribute to understanding it. And this is the big thing that I think is key to everybody getting a small clue as to what critical race theory actually is. So here's our
Oh,
DNA.
the cartoons. Oh, I've watched so much stuff on those cartoons.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to activate your PTSD.
No, it's fine. It's just fascinating to me. It just is.
Right. All right. Oh yeah. By the way, racism perpetuated in society. So what we're talking about here? Remember this guy, William Rehnquist?
Yep.
He was a lawyer in Arizona. His main claim to fame, his raison d'etre, if you will, was making it difficult for brown people to vote. He had a protege. His protege was named John Roberts.
Same John Roberts like as in right now?
It's almost like this is all part of a multi-generational scheme to continue to oppress people who aren't white for the sake of white power. I'm just saying.
No. Again, to amplify your point, I think that. So again, let's go back to Black Sunday when Dr. King marched across the bridge in Selma. There were folks there that were literally on the side of the police. I think there were people at home that were watching it on TV that were cheering for the police, but they didn't really want to be there. And that's kind of where we are now. Some folks were at home cheering for the police.
Armchair racists.
Bigots.
Yeah, you're right. It's a better word.
To go somewhere and be racist.
No, I got to train myself to make that distinction because I love that distinction.
So another key tenet is that racism is more commonplace rather than just an isolated incident. And this is, I think this is one of the reasons why you guys created your podcast. And I thank you for that. Right. Interest convergence. We kind of talked about interest convergence a little bit, but in respect to critical race theory, when there was the crack epidemic, which is crack is a derivative of an opioid, we came up with new terms. We called them crackheads, crack babies, crack whores. But yet when the Sadler family started flooding communities with, what was it?
Vicodin and Oxycontin,
right? We see this, and we see, oh my God, this is a crisis. We have to do something. Whereas over here, the interest wasn't there.
Right.
That's what
it's fascinating how you can have the exact same thing happen to two groups of people, two populations, if you will, and it's almost like no one realized what was happening when this was going on. I mean, they were separated by a decade or two, but everyone looks at the opioid crisis purely as white people being victims of it. And myself, I know that I fell early on into the mentality of, look, it is true that there were doctors over prescribing, but you also can't take away the element of choice. Okay, white people weren't victims of the opioid crisis, but
now they're participants.
They're participants in it. And to separate those two to create, again, a victim mentality no one did it. Was that done intentionally, or was it omitted by accident because everyone just assumes that white people are victims? How did we get there?
Well, that's part of what we're trying to get at, and I think CRT actually tries to get at how did we get here today? What's still in place today? Ron, a couple of things on maybe talk about how it's so systemic. I know we're getting low on time here, and
we can go over like maybe 10 minutes here, but I do want to touch base on.
We are going to have to do another one of these episodes, by the way.
We're going to have to listen to 2 episodes. That's fine. I'm learning a lot. I'm loving this. So
I could do 5 episodes of this.
Right. So here we are with storytelling, Tulsa Massacre,
which
really came to light because of Watchmen. Remember that?
Yep.
And then the massacre in Wilmington, North Carolina, 1898. Storytelling. Again, if we had not had storytelling, we would really not know about this. Now we're talking about intersectionality, and this is specifically what Professor Crenshaw contributed to critical race theory. So what if you are a female in the workplace? Okay, what if you happen to be not only just a female, but let's say that you might be disabled, maybe you are older, maybe you are Asian. Why does not the law cover all of these traits, for lack of a better description. Right. The law really focuses on one thing. Well, what if there's this other thing? Well, that's a separate suit. Why?
You could strengthen the laws if you embrace intersectionality, because then you remove the assumption that it's only a targeted thing. If you make it part of the fundamental of the law that it affects multiple groups of people, you can't as easily deny that it's a targeted, agenda-based thing. That's how I look at that. That's how important it is.
You know, so I just want to share one thing off of this slide, then I'm done. Ask questions. Would you be this upset if your child were being taught the theory of special relativity?
Yeah,
because they know what that is.
Right?
Well, it's another teaching opportunity.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Ron, how about give us a couple examples of what's in our structures today that have, been carryovers from slavery, basically. The one that pops into my head, of course, is policing, because that's where policing started, was to police slaves.
Fugitive Slave Patrol.
What are some other, or a couple of well-known examples, so that we can kind of make CRT and the learning of this information even more concrete for our viewers?
Ms. Liz, that's an interesting question. I can give you the one that's floating at the top of my mind right now is not quite as well known, right? But if we're speaking about the criminal justice system, specifically when we're talking about sentencing, right? The courts are starting to, some actually have shifted to using AI to essentially determine what's called the risk factor for sentencing folks. And even with the assistance of this very intelligent software, you still see sentencing disparities between people that are charged with the same crime. So I think what we're really talking about, or I should say what we really should consider, is that number one, AI works off of the information that's given to it.
Shit in, shit out.
So there is so much information out there. It's almost like, you can't get away from it, but there's always so much information out there that even if you use an AI system, it's only as good as the information that's given to it based on the model that it uses. Could be, machine learning, could be deep learning, could be heuristic, even with the like neural networks and stuff like that. Right. Another instance that I think always brings this to mind is whenever there is a high profile crime, whoever the defendant is or whoever the suspect is, you will always hear about one or two things. Hear about their criminal history, or you will hear about their financial troubles. Now I'll let you decide which one you're gonna hear about, but I'm gonna tell you right now, if you see me on CNN or Channel 13 News, you're not gonna be hearing about my issues trying to pay back my student loan.
Well, this is literally mirrored in the whole George Floyd thing, right? Oh, he had this in his system. Okay.
Yeah.
That didn't affect
what to do with anything. Yeah.
Well, Mike is interesting. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just going to use another example, like Eric Garner. I can't remember his name.
Nope, that's right.
They just, and again, it goes so under the radar because as a society, we're so conditioned to accept those two different conditions. White people, oh, they're poor, so they struggle. Black people, oh, they're on drugs, so they commit crimes. It's so freaking ingrained in our commercials, in our sitcoms, in everything that we don't question it because, again, in a lot of ways, all we're seeing is reinforced assumptions and stereotypes, not always intentional, but damaging still the same. So
if we go back and you trigger so many memories in me. So I apologize if I'm a bit of a chatterbug.
Do it.
It makes me think about Birth of a Nation, right? Prior to that movie coming out, Black people were seen as listless, lazy, didn't want to work, very unintelligent. Then Birth of a Nation come out. The president screens it in the White House, gives it this fantastic review, and then suddenly the narrative gets changed to, you know, basically, if I was in the same room with Miss Liz, she better run and hide. You know, but you better put your purse away first.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, because if I can't get her, I'm taking the purse. You know, it's like one or the other. Right?
Well, I'll take whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good with it either way. And then we are creative only in terms of ways to get out of work.
That's hilarious. They give you a sense of intelligence, but only used for nefarious reasons. So you're clever enough to be a master criminal and a deviant, but you're not smart enough to hold literally the most basic job that a white person can hold.
Or fly a plane.
Or fly a plane.
Yeah,
or be a mayor.
Or be a ship captain.
Would it be fair, Ron, to say that, I guess in its entirety, that CRT is digging into and looking at some of these systemic things that are in place, and to then seek solutions based on that information and that learning process? And the pushback is people are afraid of what the solutions will be. That if they solve one thing, it means it's going to hurt them. And I fundamentally think that that's flawed thinking because, you know, I have a t-shirt that says equal rights for you doesn't mean that everybody else has their sense of the pie or piece of the pie taken away.
But that's their only argument. That's all they have is fear mongering. And if you're going to address the truth, you're going to end up realizing that you look like an idiot. But if you say, well, all they want to do is reverse the racism and they want to be racist against us, well, then it's an us versus them. Yet again, like Jeremy said in the beginning, black versus white, not rich versus poor. We got to have us poor people fighting each other. You know what I mean? So how do you separate that? How do you alleviate that?
No, Miss Liz, I think you bring up an excellent point because that is literally why critical race theory exists. It is the point of all of this scholarship, all of this work, is to say that the legal system not only created the system that keeps people, you know, oppressed in one way, shape, form, or fashion or another, right? But the legal system can also be used to fix the problem.
Correct.
Right. That's a huge part of the narrative, so to speak, of why it's important that number one, people get out to vote, but number two, why we teach our children that you don't have to be a rap star, you don't have to be an influencer, you don't have to be a great football player, but what you can be is something much greater, and that's a defender of our civil liberties that are always going to be under attack from those that do not want to be faced with the fact that if we are all created the same, that maybe they might just be mediocre instead of this level of excellence or exceptionalism simply because of the place where they were born.
Absolutely. So for our listeners, I think it's important for us to help to spread that messaging, right? That CRT is an overall approach to looking at our history to see why we are where we are today. And when people come back and they're afraid of that, we have to have them acknowledge why they're afraid. And I think we need to have those conversations. If Ron gets rights, that doesn't mean that Liz is going to lose rights. And I think that's critical for us in this movement to do. And so CRT as a quote unquote curriculum absolutely is not being taught in schools. But I'm going to say, name it something else for anything, you know, for anyone's purpose. But let's get this conversation started because it has to happen. Because as long as we have these, I'll say, pillars of racism built in, it doesn't mean that I'm calling these two guys that look like ZZ Top here that are running this podcast. I'm not calling them racist, but I'm saying, you know what? There's some stuff that you've lived through and that I've lived through as a white person or white people. And we have to look at that because until we do, we will not be a nation for all. Because those things are in us. I've gone through it myself. I've used the wrong terminology for
Of
things.
course.
Luckily, I've had the, nice people that have spelled things out for me. It's just,
can't know everything.
we have to acknowledge our past, the full past, in order for us to move into a brighter future. And a brighter future for Ron does not mean a less bright future for me.
Right, exactly.
And that's what
I think it's about trying to make a better future for everybody.
But they don't want that. That's
so
what
hard to
I don't understand.
Yeah. No, unfortunately, I do have to get going here in a couple of minutes, but we're gonna talk. We're gonna make another episode and talk.
I think we do a DEI episode and then an anti-racism episode.
Well, I do want to at least bring up the concept of anti-racism because I don't ever hear that term being used at all. This is a thing.
I hear it a lot, Jeremy.
It's a state of mind. Anti-racism is a process of actively identifying and opposing racism. The goal of anti-racism is to challenge racism and actively challenge or change the policies, behaviors, and beliefs that perpetuate racist ideas and actions. We will all have to work together and recognize, like everybody said, that our past is awful, but that doesn't mean our future has to be awful as well. And if we don't vote properly in the fall, our future is going to be very freaking grim.
I think the thing that scares
for
people
a lot
about
of people,
what scares people about anti-racism, those that even know about it, obviously without looking into it, is that ironically, it sounds like a term that the right has already bastardized, anti-fascism. Right? They're saying they made it look like anti-fascism is some sort of organized movement. No, the people that landed on Normandy were anti-fascist. I am anti-fascist because I don't think fascism is a good way to live. So in that regard, I aspire to be anti-racist. It's much easier to be anti-fascist. It's harder to be anti-racist when we live in a society with such ingrained racism, which is what CRT is supposed to teach us. So you look at critical race theory and the intersectionality of DEI, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion. Those things are separate concepts, but they're based off each other because they are tools to fix the wrongs. They aren't reshifting the value. Like Liz says, I'm not going to get more than Ron. What we're going to get is equality, but that scares people because there are people who are so intent on believing their perfection and their benefit and their place and their rights, and they don't understand that none of that's real. It was just invented to keep a few people richer and to get a lot of people to hate each other and be poor.
Right. And the reason
Let me give my white lady spin on anti-racism, and then hopefully Ron can close us out because he is the expert at the table today. Here's my spin. As a white woman, I can post a meme about Martin Luther King Jr.
Thank you.
I can make a comment here and there that it seems to be supportive of someone from a marginalized community. In this case, it would be supportive of the Black community. But if I go to a dinner party and I'm sitting next to someone that is just spewing these quote unquote hysterical jokes about Black people, that's when I need to be anti-racist. And I need to have the I guess, cojones, I'll say, to say, you know what you're saying is racist and it is not going to be ignored.
We can't let it be okay.
It's taking that step from being a keyboard warrior to when it's actually applied in life. Are you really fighting against racism? Are you looking at legislation? Are you looking at candidates? Are you, looking to actually move the needle on racism? Because if you're not anti-racist. You're just, a savior.
You might not be racist, but anti-racism is an action. It's funny you say that.
Action.
And right before Ron closes us out, I just wanted to say, we're getting to the point where we're all starting to share a brain, because one of my questions was, how does someone live an anti-racist life? Is it enough to educate oneself, or is action necessary? Can you be a quiet anti-racist? And I think the answer is you cannot be a racist. That's great. But you can't be an anti-racist unless you
the bullet points, Mike, that I can share. It's a pledge with bullet points. These are the things that you need to do if you want to say that you are actually anti-racist.
Let's get that. We'll put that up. I think we should do a couple more episodes on this.
Yep. Mr. Ron.
Final words before we get out of here.
final words. First off, thank you guys. Thank you, Miss Liz, for inviting me. I've always relished the possibility of talking to somebody besides my dogs. My dogs are great for listening, but they kind of suck at giving feedback. I want everybody here, not just those of us that are on the call, but folks that are listening and will listen afterwards, to understand, number one, you're special. Because extremism is such a like I said, it's a self-defeating venture. These folks that we are combating legislatively and in our school boards, right? Eventually, what's going to happen? They're going to push their kids out of their home because they are so extreme. And who's going to be there to meet them? It's going to be people like us. It's going to be people like us that are going to call them by the names that make their heart and their spirit soar. Mm-hmm. We're going to be the people that sit with them, dance with them, march with them, cry with them, and make it okay. We're going to be the people that no matter who wins whichever election, we're going to be the ones that put our communities, our counties, our states, and eventually our nation back on a path where we can all just be okay. So I want you to walk away with the fact that not only are you on the right side of history, you're on the right side of humanity. Because time doesn't repeat itself. But what happens is certain circumstances come up, and because it's part of the human condition, this is how we respond. And it is in our higher brain functioning to not respond and not give in to our more base responses or our base emotions. So I want you to understand that the work that you're doing is important. I want you to understand that you may not change the world, but you may change the world for that one kid that needs their world changed. So thank you for that.
You got me in tears now, Ron.
Right? Yeah. I mean,
if anyone doubts the importance of the messages that not just Jeremy and I are trying to get out, but like we keep saying, we want to be the voice or a voice in the progressive movement to let people know that anyone that looks like anyone can have opinions that can help the world. Whatever the mainstream media doesn't cover, that doesn't mean it isn't important.
Exactly.
Yeah. And there's nothing to be afraid of. Progress is inevitable. All you're going to do fighting progress is end up scared and angry. It's all you're going to do. But progress is going to happen regardless. It always does.
So, Ron, we'll get with you and see if we can do an episode 2. And you can find the time for us.
I have a feeling we're going to be doing an episode 3, 4, 5, and 6. There's a lot to talk about.
Well, we'll structure it. We'll pare it down. Maybe we were a little too ambitious, and I'm going to blame that on Ron for being an awesome conversationalist. So.
Yeah.
Well,
in other words, I'm long-winded.
No,
I mean, Mike pointed out it was like 20 minutes before we played the first video. I'm like, oh no.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna speak for Jeremy. We wanted this. We want to learn as much as we can, but maybe we just tried to cram too much because we just kept asking questions, and we could listen to you all day.
No, those are. I think, and I'm fortunate from the standpoint that I started paying attention to this when Christopher Rufo. I have so many other names I had to for him that I had to file through them real quick.
4-letter ones.
Oh, well, remember I was Navy, so they don't all have to be 4-letter ones. I can be quite creative with that. But when I started hearing rumblings about this whole critical race theory thing, I knew he was going to jump on that because just the title itself scares the crap out of people, and it fits right in with the politics of fear.
Yep.
Yep.
And there's let me give you a quick book plug, not mine. There's a book called Corruptible that I'm going to start reading since I'm in between semesters right now. It's written by Brian Klaas, and he pulls in. It's not just like a political science book, but he pulls from sociology, he pulls from psychology, he pulls from neurology, And anyways, in that book, he talks about how they did an experiment, and they had kids look at 2 different pictures. Say, if you had an imaginary boat, who would you want to be the captain? of your vote. And almost 80% of the time, the kids chose the winner of the election.
Wow.
Interesting.
So again, so a lot of it is we are in modern times, but we still have this Stone Age brain that trips us up from time to time.
Yeah. So we'll put together another episode. You're just too awesome to cut you off, but I know they have their time limits. So
unfortunately, I got to go back to work on Sunday.
I
It is what it
apologize.
is.
No,
it's okay.
never do.
Eventually, like I said, we want to do more. Like we just started this venture 6 months ago, and we've been going hard in the paint for like with no budget whatsoever, just doing what we do. We don't get paid to do this. We do it because it's necessary. Mike and I just decided that, like you said, we want to be on the right side of history and even humanity even better. I just want to be. We want to do more. I think like action is required. Like you said,
this is our being active. I was just going to say that.
Like if I had the money, I would do a lot more. I would be in a lot more locations. I would be wreaking havoc on the.
I'd be infiltrating MAGA things.
Oh my God, it would be so much fun. All right, anyway,
like Jordan Klepper. Yeah.
Thank you all. I loved this afternoon and look forward to
Liz, for coming back on. Ron, it was wonderful having you on. We learned a lot. I hope our viewers learned a lot, and we're definitely going to have some future episodes. Go ahead, Liz.
One more plug. This Tuesday evening, we have an episode with the three of us, and Ron, you're welcome to join, with 5 youth that have been very active in their advocacy. And we want to hear how, what, and when from them. Some pretty amazing people. So I'm looking forward to that.
And Jeremy and I are going to need the help of an experienced teacher to handle that many students.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad we have an educator on board for this episode.
Piece of cake.
No, I think it's going to be good because when I was their age, I was not involved in politics whatsoever. So I'm
one of them's like
really
12 years old, and she, you know her, right, Ron Addison? She's from our county. You might have seen some of her stuff. Yeah.
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
At that age, I was playing Dungeons and Dragons and drinking Surge.
Nope.
Yeah,
I can honestly,
like you said, Tuesday.
Say, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say I'll be Tuesday at 8 p.m. for anybody that wants to watch that.
I can honestly say that I remember the when I became a Democrat, I was 10 years old. And it was all because of this lady named Barbara Jordan. She is the reason why I sound like this now. So imagine growing up in the hood in Georgia sounding like this. Yeah.
Well, you sound pretty awesome.
You know what? I have to say, your voice. There's a guy on Instagram that does like these taste tests, and he has this deep voice. What is his name? Oh my God, I'll have to find out and send it to you. You sound just like him. It's great.
It's comforting.
All right. Anyway, thanks everybody for joining us tonight. We'll be back on Tuesday, 8 p.m. talking to Gen Z activists. Young is 12 years old. I can't believe that. So that's going to be exciting. Everybody have a good rest of your day. Like always, we will talk to you soon.
Everybody.
Cool.
America is a great country. We've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. And systemic racism has been in the soil of this land since 1619. Now, this country was born with high ideals. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equally. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The land of the free and the home of the brave. Liberty and justice for all. America was founded on high ideals. But at the same time, there was a birth defect, a genetic imperfection on the question of race that took the form of chattel slavery, one of the worst crimes against humanity in the history of the world. So no, we're just not simply going to move on. And some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle seem to take the position that after 246 years of chattel slavery, an amendment is passed, my bad, get over it, move on. No, we will not.